It's no secret that our region is in a housing crisis. The demand for housing has surged as our city has grown, fueled by economic opportunities and a vibrant cultural scene. However, this growth has not been met with an adequate increase in housing supply, leading to skyrocketing rents and home prices that are pushing many families to the brink of financial stability. As a result, we are confronted with the impacts of this pressurized housing market as we experience increased resident displacements and increase in eviction rates and in homelessness. Over the last year, our community has faced two of the worst examples of landlord neglect the city of Columbus has ever witnessed. Colonial Village and Latitude 525 displaced thousands of families in our community and cost the city over $9 million in relocation efforts. 2 months ago, Council President Hardin and I sent a message to the predatory investors and landlords that this behavior will not be tolerated in the city of Columbus. Last month, we legislated over $300,000 to aid residents with relocation as we continue to explore creative solutions to address this issue. Today marks another pivotal step in protecting the rights and well-being of Columbus residents. Tonight, City Council will vote on Columbus's first ever Relocation Assistance Code, a modification of City Code that will hold property owners responsible for relocation and for housing costs. If tenants are forced to leave their home due to an emergency vacate order, this relocation code would kick in. I am incredibly thankful to the mayor, to City Attorney Klein, and Director Stevens for their partnership and for their vision. Additionally, tonight, City Council will also vote on two other crucial pieces of housing legislation. Led by Council President Pro Tem Rob Dorrance, we will vote on two code changes to create a vacant property registry and a foreclosed property registry. Vacant and foreclosed property residential units can quickly become blighted and abandoned properties. These code changes will ensure that vacant and foreclosed properties are protected and maintained, and that city officials are alerted to the location of these vulnerable properties, so we can bring the properties back online and add to our housing stock. These two code changes are a part of Council's 12-piece housing policy package, which was announced in March of last year. This council stands firm in our belief that housing is a human right, period. Tonight's legislation is a step towards making that a reality for all residents. With that, I would like to welcome Director Stevens to share more on the Relocation Assistance Code.
Thank you, Chair Favor, President Pro Tem Dorrance, City Attorney Klein. I can say on behalf of Mayor Ginther, the partnership and the leadership that you show on addressing our housing needs in this community is very much appreciated and welcomed. The proposed Relocation Assistance Code before City Council holds accountable those property owners who look to exploit our neighbors. The updated City Code will hold property owners responsible when an emergency vacate order is issued. Councilmember Favor talked about some recent examples of our residents being impacted by emergency vacate orders at Latitude 525 in Colonial Village. It will require landlords to pay for select relocation and housing costs for tenants forced out of their homes due to property owner neglect. If displacement is temporary due to repairs, temporary housing costs will be covered by the property owner for up to 3 months, as long as they are deemed reasonable and necessary. And if a unit cannot be reoccupied, property owners will provide a cash payment to the tenants equal to 3 times the monthly fair market rent. This amount will be determined by using a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development formula based on household size. And if a landlord or property owner refuses to pay, the city will assist our neighbors by temporarily covering the cost of relocation. However, we will work with the city attorney to recoup the city's expenses and ultimately hold the landlord accountable. Many landlords are small business owners and entrepreneurs who provide safe and stable housing solutions to our neighbors. The updated code does not impact them. This legislation is part of our housing strategy. Along with other homeowner assistance programs, our efforts to update our zoning code and encourage the addition of new housing at all price points throughout the region. This new code will allow Columbus to continue to address the housing crisis head-on. Now it's my honor to be able to introduce City Attorney Klein. I just want to take a moment and say it's been a pleasure to work with him and his colleagues in the City Attorney's Office as every day we work to address the issues facing our residents and around housing to make sure that it's safe and it's stable, and they've been a great partner, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director, and I feel the same way about you and your team, and of course, my council colleagues and friends, Chair Favor and Chair Dorans, President Pro Tem Dorans, kind of picking up where Director Stevens left off, not praising me, but the theme of this notion that a vast majority of our landlords in the city of Columbus are good people. They're small business owners. They are entrepreneurs. They're out there to make a buck. That's okay. But they do it in a responsible way that protects their tenants. And that's the most important thing. But we have seen, I think, in a high-profile way, what happens when you get a bunch of landlords, which are few, but impactful, that don't care about their tenants, that don't want to invest the money. They're okay cashing the check on the first, but they won't take any of that money and dump it back into the buildings or into the tenant's quality of life. And certainly the most notable examples are Latitude 525 and Colonial Village. And our efforts there with the Department of Development, with the support of the mayor and the council, we have been able to take drastic steps to put those properties in receivership and get it out of the hands of these irresponsible, primarily out-of-state landlords. But with that does come a cost, not only a human toll and a human cost. For example, at Latitude 525, Sawyer Towers, those folks were displaced on Christmas Day. And with a Herculean effort with not-for-profit folks, Steve Dunbar and Tia Ross in my office as part of the property action team, members of council, the county, we were able to relocate those individuals. And the good news is we're going to be able to hopefully recoup those costs. In the same way with Colonial Village, when the Haitian refugees were taken advantage of and brought into our community, that place, the Colonial Village, ultimately had to be vacated, and we're in a legal battle there to recoup the cost too. But that legal battle, as with any legal battle, it's never guaranteed. It's never guaranteed that the city's going to recoup that money. And what I particularly like and support about this legislation is that it legalizes the process for us to recoup the costs and puts the burden, the financial burden, where it belongs. And that's on the landlord, not the taxpayer. So this process is really important as we continue to have a tighter housing market where costs are increasing and landlords become too greedy. That small number becomes too greedy, and they're not willing to invest in their properties, and thus our fellow Columbus residents, our friends, our neighbors have to live in unsanitary, unsafe, and very dangerous conditions that none of us would ever want to live in. And then regarding the foreclosure and registry and the vacant and abandoned property registry, the number of vacant properties identified as in poor condition since I've become city attorney has decreased by 85%. That's a great win. And I attribute that to the work of the Department of Development. I attribute that to work as just market conditions, but I also attribute it to the work of our property action team that holds the property owners accountable, even though the place is uninhabited, holds the property owner accountable to try to maintain the property. And by having a more standardized and more formal standard of care for property owners to have for vacant and abandoned properties, I think sets a level playing field for us to ensure that if you're going to choose to leave your property vacant or leave it oftentimes even uninhabitable, let alone vacant, that you have a responsibility. You just can't leave it for the neighbors of that neighborhood to come try to take care of it or for the city to take care of it. You have your own responsibility, and by creating this registry, it alerts us of who those people are, heightens the level of accountability so that we can go after you for the neglect that you're causing in your neighborhoods. So at this time, I'll turn it over to one of the champions of this legislation, and that's Councilmember Dorns, President Pro Tem.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I want to pause and talk about the unique nature of both having the city attorney up here and the Department of Development as we're having these big housing conversations in the city of Columbus. I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, you wouldn't hear these kind of things coming from folks like City Attorney Klein or the Department of Development. That is how important housing is in our community right now, is to have champions like these that make preservation and the creation of housing a central issue for Columbus. And I certainly want to thank City Attorney Klein and Director Stevens and the mayor for leaning into this and not just staying within their traditional roles, but taking an expanded role as it relates to the housing crisis in Columbus. I also want to thank Chair Favor that I think during her 5 years on council, we have not seen a champion for housing like her. And certainly the number of reforms that have come through City Council during her time on council has been incredibly impactful. There's no singular answer to the housing crisis as it exists here in Columbus. But through her leadership and the leadership of the mayor and city council, we're trying to implement specific policies where we can in order to bring relief to folks in our community. And I'm proud that tonight, council will be voting on 2 pieces of legislation that were identified last year as part of Chair Favor's housing package. As we've talked about the foreclosure and vacant property registry, it is insane that at a time of a housing crisis in Columbus, that we have thousands of vacant and foreclosed properties in Columbus. These are places that families could call home today, but don't. And the question is, why not? And for us as a city, oftentimes we see these properties fall into neglect, become blight in their community, and not have the opportunity to get turned back over to the marketplace to provide housing for families. These 2 registries will allow the city attorney, the Department of Building and Zoning Services, the Department of Development to actually be able to concretely identify these properties and work with these owners to make sure that they stay in good condition for their neighborhoods, but also, as Chair Favor said, to try to bring them back online to provide incredibly needed housing for folks in our community. So that is why we're bringing those 2 pieces of legislation to a vote here tonight. And these are just 2 pieces of legislation and a number of them over the past 5 years that, again, I've been proud to work with Chair Favor and my council colleagues on. There's no stop to the work at council on trying to find ways for us to meaningfully impact this housing crisis, and I expect that those efforts will continue into the future to make sure that more and more of our residents have the opportunity to have a stable, affordable place to call home. And with that, I'd like to turn the mic back over to Chair Favor.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Dorns, and I want to echo the sentiments of City Attorney Klein. The vast majority of our landlords and property owners are doing everything they can to provide safe and habitable housing for all of our residents in the city of Columbus. But unfortunately, when we do have those bad actors and we have multifamily units that house hundreds of families, it has compounding effects when folks are displaced from our community. So today's passage, hopefully, of the relocation code will assist the city in its efforts to provide safe and habitable housing for our residents, while also helping to center those vacant and foreclosed properties in our city that could be used for housing our residents. Thank you to Council President Pro Tem Dorns, as well as to City Attorney Zach Klein, to Mayor Ginther, Director Stevens, and his entire department that have been working tirelessly to bring this legislation here today. We were happy to have one-on-one conversations. Thank you for your attendance in today's press conference. All right. Thank you.